Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Sap, I got to be honest with you, I was not expecting to be here today talking about the Celtics forcing a Game 7, especially as the game was progressing. It seemed more and more like they were not going to win that game on the road in Philadelphia. And lo and behold, somehow, some way, they ended up with a 95-86 victory. It was not pretty. And Game 7 will be on Mother's Day this Sunday in Boston. We're not sure what time yet. A couple of things have to be determined still. See if there's any other Game 7s going on. But the Celtics found a way, and I tweeted this out, and I said I could watch that game 100 times and still not really figure out how the Celtics won that game. But the standings are official, Sep. It is tied 3-3. They did, in fact, win. And like I said, Game 7 on Sunday.
Did the Celtics win or did Philadelphia lose? Maybe that's a more pointed question, right? Because neither team looked all that great last night. Obviously, Jason Tatum was 1 for his first 14. And in the last 3 games, Tatum is 0 for 6 to start game 4, 0 for 6 to start game 5, and 0 for 10 to start game 6. So he's certainly struggled in the early going of the last 3 games, 2 of which were won by the 76ers. Now, the big thing, obviously, in the game last night was the Celtics went with their double big lineup of Rob Williams, Al Horford, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Marcus Smart. Now, that's a lineup that Joe Mazzulla's only used for 80 minutes this year. And it's a lineup I don't think he likes because you don't have a bunch of three-point shooters out there. Obviously, Rob Williams is in for Derek White. Derek White's a good three-point shooter. Rob Williams never goes out to the three-point line unless he's playing defense. So it's not a Joe Mazzulla lineup, and they went with it last night. Their defense was improved. Philadelphia still missed some open shots. I mean, they had some opportunities to maybe take control of that game in the fourth quarter, and they just kept missing and missing and missing. In fact, Jason Tatum outscored the Sixers all by himself 16-13 in the fourth quarter. Offensively, the Celtics struggled, led by Jason Tatum, who was 1 for his first 14 shots. So the double big lineup worked. That's what got them to the finals last year. Offensively, it's not as versatile, although it does give you Rob Williams as a lob threat at the rim, which is a good thing since Al Horford and Jason Tatum couldn't buy a bucket for most of that game. So you have to kind of live with a little bit less versatility on offense, but it is better defensively. And hopefully they'll go back with it in Game 7 on Sunday.
Yeah, you're right in that it's not a Joe Mazzulla lineup. He doesn't like lineups where everybody, he wants everybody to be able to shoot threes. Rob Williams isn't playing outside of the paint on offense. But yeah, defensively it did work for them, Sap. But offensively, both these teams were awful last night. And Jason Tatum was historically awful until about the last 4-5 minutes of the fourth quarter, where he finally came alive. But he couldn't buy a basket, like you said. Al Horford couldn't buy a basket. Jaylen Brown wasn't particularly good last night. They didn't get they didn't get any, like you said, 3-point shooting out of Al Horford at all in this series. But Marcus Smart was surprisingly good and efficient last night, shooting the ball, and he led the way offensively. And Malcolm Brogdon chipped in with 4 3-pointers off the bench, and that was enough.
Just enough, right? Yeah.
On most nights, that's not going to be nearly enough. And if Philadelphia didn't play just awful down the stretch, the Celtics are home today, are going, they're in Cancun today. So, if you're looking at the box score at some of the guys on Philadelphia, just the shooting was horrendous for them too. It wasn't just Jason Tatum and Al Horford were shooting well. Tobias Harris, 1 of 3, PJ Tucker, 3 of 8, James Harden, 4 of 16, DeAndre Melton, 0 of 5. Just a bunch of guys just throwing up bricks last night, Sap. And, for the star players, for Embiid, he played well, but they needed him to play at like an MVP level. If he plays at an MVP level last night, he had 26 and 10 and 3 blocks, and those are really good numbers. But if he plays at the level that we know he's capable of, and maybe he doesn't have the knee injury, maybe he's a little bit better conditioned, they win that game handily.
Marcus Smart was the best player on the court last night, right? 22, 7, and 7. He was consistent from the get-go. He was one of the guys that kept you in it. Actually, they built a 16-point lead in the second quarter. Then Philadelphia goes on a 53-35 run over a 24-minute period right in the middle of the game towards the middle of the fourth quarter. And then, of course, we know how the Celtics ended the game with a 14-3 run led by Jason Tatum. And I still think Philadelphia should have gone to Joel Embiid more than they did down the stretch. He only had 19 field goal attempts.
Yeah,
Harden was
Doc said as
completely off
much.
last night. Yeah, but James Harden was completely off last night. Now, this whole series has come down to James Harden, right? He was spectacular in game one and in game four. Philadelphia wins both of those. He was really good in game five. He didn't shoot a lot, but he still had 17 points, 10 assists, 8 rebounds. He kind of controlled the offense. You won that game as well. He's been awful in games 2, 3, and 6, all Celtic wins. What James Harden's going to show up Sunday at TD Garden, who the hell knows? He's never really had a history of playing well in game sevens. So the Celtics have that on their side. And even more so is Doc Rivers in these situations. Doc Rivers is 17-32 all time with an opportunity to close out a series. That is
That's
pathetic.
terrible.
And then look at 6 specific series in his career, which is going to end up with Doc Rivers in the Hall of Fame. There's no question. I like Doc Rivers, love Doc Rivers as a player, as a guy. I mean, he was a go-to guy as a player to interview after tough losses when Atlanta would come in and lose to the Celtics at the old Boston Garden. But 3 times in his career as a head coach, he has lost the series after having a 3-1 lead. And on 3 other occasions, he's lost a playoff series after having a 3-2 lead. And if they lose Sunday, that will be the 4th time that happens. So there's something missing with Doc Rivers. Now, you can make a case on some of those situations. He didn't have the better team, but still, when you're up 3-1, you should seal the deal.
Yeah.
If you're up 3-2 and you're home in game 6 and the team you're facing doesn't really have much on offense and their best player can't find the basket at all for 3.5 quarters, you probably should win that. More of Joel Embiid down the stretch. He never got the ball in the final 4.5 minutes. He's the MVP for a reason. They went away from him. And no matter what the Celtics do, he's just an impossible matchup. We've talked about Embiid. He's dealing with the knee. Also, we've seen this before with Embiid. He's not the best conditioned athlete in the league. Maybe just loses gas in the second half of the fourth quarter, as does James Harden oftentimes. One final thing about Sunday's game, Jet, and I'm getting a bit long-winded here, but it could be an advantage for the 76ers because this series has been off and on game to game, right? It's been game, off day, game. It's 1 day in between games. Well, going into game 7, you have 2 days between game 6 and 7. Maybe that favors Philadelphia a little bit, gives them an extra days of rest for both Harden and Embiid. It also helps the Celtics with Al Horford, who looks about 65 years old at this point. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think that is some slight advantage that the 2 best players in Philadelphia could use a little extra rest going into game 7.
Yeah, they could. And for the Celtics, you look at it and say, Al Horford can't miss all of his threes at every shot attempt he can through 3 games in a row, can he? Can the Celtics possibly lose 3 home games in a best-of-7 series? Can Jason Tatum play that bad, for consistently through all those games? I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer, Sap. I've kind of thrown up my hands with this series and the Celtics team. I just don't know what team is going to show up. I don't know what player is going to show up. I have no idea how this game will go. Anybody who says that they have a sense of who's going to win this game 7 is lying to you. It's so unpredictable because these teams have played so inconsistent, Sap.
Well, this is within a game, right? The inconsistency. It's not necessarily from game to game. It's within a game. Celtics looked really good in the first quarter and a half last night. They were up 46-30 over the next 28 minutes or whatever it was. The Sixers outscored them 53-35, and then the Celtics end the game on a 14-3 run. Like, what's that all about? And I know that it's a make or miss league, as Doc Rivers has often said. It's a league of streaks, right? You play really well for quarter half, and then you don't play well for 2 quarters. That happens in the NBA, but there's just been wild paces with the 76ers and Celtics. And these are supposed to be the 2 best teams left. I mean, the Celtics ended up with the 2nd best record in the NBA. Philadelphia ended up with the 3rd best record in the NBA. They have the league MVP. And you're watching this going, these teams are both flawed, let alone teams below them like Miami, the Knicks, the Lakers, Golden State. And again, I know we're going to talk a little bit about Denver beating Phoenix in 6 games. Maybe Denver's just the best team in basketball because they've been the most consistent in the postseason. But it's really maddening to watch because you just see the Celtics. If they just play a solid game, take care of the basketball, hit 38% of their threes, and are engaged defensively, I think they will win. But are we going to get that Sunday?
Yeah, you just don't know. It's really Jekyll and Hyde with this team, and part of it is something missing, I think, from the personality of the players, and part of it, as we've talked extensively about, is I don't trust the coach. I don't know that the players trust the coach. Marcus Smart had an interesting comment after the postgame. I don't know if you caught it, Sapper. He said Joe Mazzulla has been killed, in the media and on social media, rightfully so.
That
So
was amazing.
I've never heard that before, where someone said, "Yeah,
No.
our coach did a terrible job, so he get
And
criticized."
again,
Rightfully so.
this is your third, fourth, or fifth best player. This isn't even the superstar on the team. I mean, if Michael Jordan echoed that when Stan Albeck was his coach or Doug Collins was his coach, you'd say, okay, it's Michael Jordan. He can kind of get away from this. And we know certain players have gotten coaches fired. But Marcus Smart is, a team guy who is either the third, fourth, or fifth best player on the team. He was their best player last night. Yeah, that was stunning. Marcus Smart sounded like a sports radio talk show host more than he did a member of the Boston Celtics. And you know what? If the players went to Joe Mazzulla and begged him, twisted his arm to go back to the double big lineup,
That's the rumor.
good for them, right? Because it worked, right? The ends justify the means. They won the game. Mazzulla, that probably had him shaking, thinking of having two bigs on the floor at the same time because he likes to stretch the floor and fire up a bunch of three-pointers. But go back to it again, see what happens. You don't have to stick with it for 48 minutes. No one's saying that. But at least you get a little bit of firepower off the bench with Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon. Those guys can score some points. They both contributed last night. I also think, here's my case of thinking Marcus Smart is so insecure and I wouldn't say paranoid. I don't want to go that far, but does he just feel like it's his team when Derek White's not on the floor with him, that he's the true point guard? He's the de facto captain of the team, the longest serving member, that Derek White kind of gets in the way of him a little bit, that Derek White, let's not forget, probably was the Celtics' third best player this year. Derek White made second team all defense in the NBA. Marcus Smart didn't. And Derek White won a player of the week, Eastern Conference player of the week. Marcus Smart didn't. I just wonder if Marcus Smart's more comfortable with Derek White coming off the bench than in the starting lineup.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm reading it more as the players think the coach might be dumb, that, not good at his job. I think they like him, like, as a person a lot. I think
he's
they
their
view him
age,
as
essentially.
He's their age. I think they view him as a peer. And then they were like saying, so Joe Mazzulla, like, would you tell Jason Tatum in the, to get back going? He's like, I told him I love him. What kind of coaching is that? I don't know, Sap. I mean, again, if we talked all about like Mazzulla and the weird stuff that's going on with the Celtics in terms of coaching, it would be the entire podcast. We would never get to the other series.
Some. Well, one final note, Jeff, before we get on to some of the other series. I mean, this postseason has been wild, unpredictable. If the Lakers win it and Anthony Davis is the MVP of the finals, Skip Bayless's head's going to explode and say, well, it's really not a championship for LeBron. He's still two behind Michael Jordan. Could the Celtics win the championship and then move on from Joe Mazzulla at the end of the season, hoist banner 18 and say, we've got to get a better coach because we didn't really play to the same level that we should have? I mean, who knows? Because we both agree they have the best roster in the NBA. Maybe an unfulfilled championship, if that makes any sense.
At this point, it's whatever the players say, I guess. I think that they'll say, if, hey, you guys want to keep this guy? Yes or no? And whatever they say goes. So I don't know. It's a bizarre situation because of how he got the job. And he's a weird guy, Joe Mazzulla, and he hasn't really availed himself well, not just to the media, but in terms of his coaching performance in the postseason. And now players are saying, rightfully so, he's been criticized. So I don't know. It's a very strange situation. But again, we would spend much time talking about it, and we want to move on to the other series. So Celtics Sixers Sunday. We don't know what time yet, but they will be playing a Game 7 in Boston. And a series that will not go to 7 games is the Denver Nuggets and Phoenix Suns. As for the second year in a row, the Suns get blown out in an elimination game and sent packing. Denver wins 125-100 off the back of another incredible game from Nikola Jokic, 32 points, 12 assists, 10 rebounds, 3 steals and a block too, 13 of 18 from the floor, so incredibly efficient. And the Nuggets rolled, and then now the Suns have a lot of thinking to do, Sap. So I think 2 surprising things in this series, because we both picked the Suns in it. So one, that the Suns lost and didn't really play very competitive for the most part. They won the 2 games at home. And then the other thing for me is that now there's a lot of questions about what Phoenix has to do in the offseason. You're hearing rumors about Chris Paul. You're hearing rumors about DeAndre Ayton. So before we get to the Suns and what they're going to do, should we be giving the Nuggets a lot more credit than we've been giving them, Sap?
Yeah, they've been the best team in the postseason, right? They took care of Minnesota in 5 games, took care of Phoenix in 6 games. Jokic has just been incredible from game 1 of the postseason. That's like his average night, 32 points, 10 rebounds, 12 assists, 3 steals, and a block. That's like a Nikola Jokic average game. The other players have stepped up. KCP was big last night. And I always liked KCP because he was big 3 years ago in the finals, helping the Lakers win a championship. Jamal Murray's had some really good games, some down games. I think it's going to be another year before he's himself, coming off that gruesome knee injury a couple of years ago. Aaron Gordon is up and down. Michael Porter Jr. is up and down. But, if one of those guys plays well and plays good defense, which they did against Kevin Durant, then they're going to be a tough team to beat. They'll have home court advantage over either the Lakers or Golden State. So you got to give them some credit. With Phoenix, the way they were constructed, not a very deep team, although Campaign had a really nice game last night. So much depended on Kevin Durant and Devin Booker being nearly perfect, right? They had one game in this series where they combined for 83 and they only won by 5 or 6 points. That's asking a lot of 2 players. They just don't have enough around them. I would think you got to move on from DeAndre Ayton. He doesn't even want to be there. The Suns matched that contract he signed last offseason with, I believe it was Charlotte, or who signed him?
Indiana.
That's right. Indiana signed him as a restricted free agent. They matched it. I don't think they really want him anymore. He doesn't want to be there. He's feuding with Monty Williams, which that almost seems impossible because Monty Williams is one of the nicest guys in the league. And I think you have to move on from him. And you don't need draft picks because you got Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. You need players, can you move on from him and get some value back in return and start to build from there, sign some free agents, like mid-level exception free agents or whatever. Just try to build your roster because you'll have an offseason to do it. But that's what the Suns are going to have to do. And look, Chris Paul's going to be 38 by the start of next season, and he's always injured. Like, can you count on him as well?
Here's what I do if I'm Phoenix, and I think that it's overblown that they need to completely reassess everything and blow things up. I think they made a trade at midseason to get one of the best players in basketball, and then he missed a lot of time with injury too. So I think he'll going through a full training camp and stuff. They'll naturally be better next year because they'll have Durant for more time around the team. So I think that way they'll improve too. They'll have a little bit of money for free agency. They'll have more of a pool of players who want to join a team with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. So they'll get deeper that way too. I agree with you. They should trade DeAndre Ayton. And I would just look at it. They don't have to get a star or even an all-star player back, but get really quality role players. If they can get 3 quality role players for him, they'll be in really good shape. Chris Paul, like you said, he's constantly hurt and stuff like that. So they need to find a very good, dependable backup point guard. If they don't get rid of Chris Paul, I don't know. I think he's still got a year or 2 on his deal. I wouldn't. He'll be tough to trade. He's got a lot of money on his contract. And I think when he plays, he's still effective, but they need to address the depth and they need to address making sure that they have somebody who they feel comfortable to play 30 games for them at starting point guard, and assume Chris Paul's going to miss that many. I don't think that they need any sort of massive upheaval. And I guess trading DeAndre Ayton seems like that, but once Durant got there, Sap, he became their 4th banana. So it's not like, they're going to change a lot of the things they do. They don't really run anything through Ayton. So for them, I'm looking at tweaks and making sure that they find the best role players they can. Because they didn't really get anything out of the guys they picked up, around the deadline, Sap, outside of Durant. Terrence Ross didn't give them all that much. TJ Warren didn't give them all that much. He's never been right since he's got hurt post-bubble. They need to improve the bench, improve the role players, and I think that they should be a championship contender next year if they're able to do that, Sap. And from what I've been reading, the market for Ayton should be robust. Again, I don't think they're going to get an all-star player or star player back for him, but get good veteran role players. And if you have just Durant and Devin Booker and you surround them with really good players, I think that's enough in the NBA right now to compete for a title.
And Phoenix is a destination. Players love it there. It's a good organization, new ownership, but their training staff has always been considered the best in the business. Monty Williams if he keeps his job, because that's obviously going to be in question now that they do have new ownership, is a player's coach that seems like everyone besides DeAndre Ayton likes playing for. And as far as Chris Paul, maybe you try to get another point guard, or Campaign as your backup point guard. You kind of treat them like a goalie tandem in hockey, where Chris Paul plays, 48 games and the other point guard plays 34, at least, split at 60-40 in terms of minutes played in a given season, so that you can have a somewhat healthy Chris Paul for the end of the season. But if you got Durant and you've got Booker, you're on your way to building something there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and Devin Booker was, I think, the best player in the playoffs up until last night, where he had his first bad game. It came at not a very opportune time for Phoenix, but he was fantastic throughout the playoffs. Like I said the other day, Sep, he's elevated to a level I didn't think he was capable of. I don't think Kevin Durant's slowing down all that much. He certainly doesn't look like it. So you have those two pillars. And then you fill out the roster at the seams there. It's hard to do it. We said this when they made the trade, Sep. It's hard to do it on the fly, to say, okay, we're going to build a championship roster at the trade deadline. That's really tough to do. And so I think this will be a big offseason for them. And I think that they're going to be able to put together a team that looks a lot more cohesive and capable of winning a championship in the offseason. You and I were very high on them this postseason. I had them going to the finals. Obviously, the depth came into play. Chris Paul's injury came into play, and then I think we underrated the Nuggets. I certainly did, and so
yeah, without question, yeah. And I also
so,
think Kevin Durant wasn't Kevin Durant in this series. He was nowhere near as efficient as he normally is. I mean, here's a guy who shot 55% from the floor this year, better than 40% from three and 90% from the free throw line. I mean, we talk about 50, 40, 90. Well, this guy was 55, 40, 90, but he was shooting well below 50% from the floor in this series. He had like an 11 for 27, a 10 for 24. That's not Kevin Durant. He's much more efficient than that. So maybe the injuries are catching up to him, or there was some sort of chemistry issue with Devin Booker or whatever. But again, you're right, Jet. You can't do this on the fly in mid-season where you're, swapping rosters to try to build around Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. You can do that in the offseason. And I always compare it to the Celtics in 2007 when they acquired Kevin Garnett. They had nothing else around Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Rondo, and Perkins, but they built the bench in the offseason and were able to win a championship.
Yeah, that's what you have to do. I don't know that it's possible to acquire a star player like a Kevin Durant at the trade deadline and give up. I mean, they gave up a lot of players for him, and have a roster that you feel like, okay, we're confident in the rest of this roster. It's too hard to do. But like you said, Sap, is a great point. They are a destination because it's warm there. They have a good training staff. The owner is new and not problematic, except for getting into fights with Nikola Jokic. I think that Kevin Durant is one of, if not the most popular player in the league. And so players will want to play with him. Devin Booker seems likable too. Chris Paul has his fans. I think there's people who love him, some people who don't amongst the players. But there will be a destination for sure. They will get good veteran players in the offseason. I expect for them to look a lot better at the start of next season and be competing for a championship next year. I don't expect DeAndre Ayton to be on the team, though.
No, they have to move on from him. He just doesn't feel like he wants to be there, clashing with the coach, and it just doesn't seem like he fits in.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last question about this series I have for you, Sap, before we move on to the last two games and the last part of our show today. If Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets win a championship, does he take that mantle that you and I think Giannis has right now as the best player in basketball?
The only issue I would have with that is he's not a great defensive player, and Giannis is. But Jokic is more durable at this point, and again, he's a much better shooter than Giannis. He's a better passer than Giannis. He's a different type of rebounder than Giannis. I mean, Giannis just, will grab rebounds to take the breath away.
I get that it's not an apples to apples comparison.
Right. Yeah. And Jokic is kind of this unique player, right? I mean, this big, huge guy who doesn't look like an NBA player, and it's not about the color of his skin. It's just his body type. I mean, he looks like a dad out there playing.
Yeah, it's about the thickness of his skin.
Well, then he's got these really skinny arms too. Like he looks like a dad playing with his 14-year-old son and the son's friends. Like he's just bigger than everybody and so highly skilled. He could get to that level. Again, he's not a great defensive player, and his game is just so subtle too. I mean, he's such an efficient scorer. Yeah, I mean, he would definitely be in the argument. He's a two-time MVP, and I picked them before the season started to win the
You did.
championship
You did.
because it was a similar track that Giannis was on. Win 2 league MVPs, then win a championship when you don't win the league MVP. Well, Jokic won back-to-back MVPs, didn't win it this year, was Embiid, so maybe it's Denver's turn and Jokic's turn to win a championship. That franchise has never appeared in the NBA Finals, which blows my mind because they've had some really good teams and they've been in the league since 1976. So it's not like the Clippers, who have been, horrible for, 90% of their existence. Denver's been competitive over the years. Yeah, he would definitely get into that discussion because now you're the champion, you're a two-time MVP, and I would say that his supporting cast is good, not great. Jamal Murray's their second best player. He's not what he was a couple of years ago, and then you get kind of inconsistent wings in Gordon and in Michael Porter Jr. So, yeah, that would be quite an accomplishment. To get there, to get to the finals, he's going to have to beat Steph Curry or LeBron James, which would be a major feather in his cap as well. And also, if they play the Lakers, which I hope is the case, he's going to have to go mano a mano against Anthony Davis, who's kind of owned him in the past. So if he can get through the Lakers and Anthony Davis and obviously LeBron, that'd be quite an accomplishment for Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something it's a subplot that is intriguing me right now and something to look at. But you did mention the Lakers, Sap, and that's going to bring us to the last part of the show today. 2 game 6s tonight. The Heat and Knicks, which for some reason, just like, even though it's the Knicks in New York, just has lacked juice. People don't seem really intrigued by that series.
Yeah, you're so right, Jet. Like, okay, everyone's talking today. When are the Celtics going to play the 76ers in Game 7? So if the Lakers wrap things up, like I hope they do tonight, then the Celtics and 76ers will play at 3:30 on Sunday. If the Lakers lose to Golden State, then Lakers-Golden State Game 7 will be at 3:30 on Sunday. The Celtics would play at 8 o'clock Sunday night, Philadelphia-Boston. What happens if the Knicks win Game 6 in Miami?
Right, why is nobody talking about that?
No one's talked about that. Like, maybe I'm just lazy. Is that going to be Monday, or is that going to be the 1 o'clock game?
I haven't heard not a single person
right? Yeah.
say anything about it.
Yeah, we're all waiting with bated breath. Okay, if the Lakers win, the Celtics play at 3:30. If the Lakers lose, the Celtics play at 8. Well, there's a chance that Miami, New York goes to Game 7 as well. And it's almost like the networks are like, oh, no, we don't want to see those two teams play because it's boring as all hell.
Remind me, is the biggest media market in the country still New York, right?
By far. But
I don't understand what's happening.
But so much of it also obviously depends on the star power of a given series. So obviously,
neither team has star. I mean, Jimmy Butler is just a phenomenal, but he's not a star. He's not like a sexy name.
No. And then the Knicks are, Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle struggling, and Tom Thibodeau is not the most exciting coach either. I mean, makes Bill Belichick look like a stand-up comedian. When you look at, obviously, the marquee matchup is who? Lakers, Golden State.
Sure.
Because it's LeBron, Steph. I mean,
and it's doing crazy numbers for the NBA, Seth. It's doing great.
It's doing great. So, I'm sure the league would like to extend the series to 7 games or 9 games or 11 games if they had their druthers. But, let's hope the Lakers wrap this thing up tonight so I can breathe on Sunday and just focus on the Celtics.
But it's like if there's a Game 7 between the Knicks and the Miami, are they going to put it on NBA TV? Like, what?
Right. Is it going to be 1 o'clock? Is it going to be Monday? I mean, like, it can't be tomorrow. And why, because if you really were going to do this right, you'd have the Celtics Sixers play Saturday. I know the Sunday games are big, but it's almost like it hasn't crossed anyone's mind. I would assume if the Lakers win and then the Knicks force Game 7, then Celtics Sixers goes at 3:30. Then do the Knicks and Miami go at 8 on Sunday? I don't know. It's almost like it's the forgotten series.
It really is. And again, it's because of the style, I think, of both the teams and the lack of a sexy name. But it is still, Miami is a marquee franchise, and New York is New York. Mm-hmm. And then it's still forgotten. It's very strange. I mean, maybe it's that, okay, it's Game 6 in Miami. The Knicks don't have that a particularly great roster, and they just assume Jimmy Butler is going to go for 50 and knock him out or something like that. Yeah. So I don't know. But and here we are, not going to really delve into that game. But so Sap, Warriors, Lakers, Game 6. It's in LA. Anthony Davis is going to play, but did have a concussion or concussion symptoms. I'm not sure what they're exactly saying.
Actually, he didn't have symptoms because if he did, then he'd be in protocol. So he got hit in the temple and somehow passed the test. Maybe, it was rigged so that he wouldn't have
Yeah,
to
his
sit
doctor
out for a
was
period of
LeBron.
time. Yeah, LeBron was the doctor. Yeah, exactly. And, Adele was also assisting courtside with Jack Nicholson. So the Lakers are 5-0 at home this year. Nicholson should be in the building. My biggest fear is Steph Curry hasn't really gone crazy yet in this
No.
series. He's due for a 45-point game, and Klay Thompson's always due for a 32-point game,
Yeah, he's been
especially.
terrible, Klay
And Klay
Thompson.
Thompson's generally had huge game sixes for whatever reason. Like throughout his career, like he shines in game six, especially if they're trailing. So that's my biggest fear. Those two guys go off and combine for 75 points. And we saw Draymond Green much more engaged in game five. Will he do that again? I mean, you don't generally see Draymond Green score 20 points in a game. You might see him score 20 points in a week, but
Yeah.
he was really into it in game five. And again, it comes down to a lot of these secondary players for the Lakers. Is Austin Reeves going to step up? Is Hachimura going to have a big game? What's Dennis Schroeder going to do? How's D'Angelo Russell? He's kind of the third guy there, right? So he's capable of giving you 25, 28 points. Two of those guys are going to have to step up. LeBron does what he does, and then Anthony Davis dominate. And I think they should be okay if that's the case.
I mean, they should. I guess the pressure is on them because there's championship expectations, and it's the Lakers, and it's a home game. But the Warriors have also been just dreadful on the road this year. I mean, really bad. So the Lakers should win this game if Anthony Davis is truly healthy. He's been the best player in this series. So if he's able to do, the Warriors have no counter for him, Sap. They
No.
have nothing that they can do, no adjustments to make to stop Anthony Davis. They don't have any players that can match up with him. So the only way they can really win, Sap, is like you said, if Steph Curry goes crazy or Klay Thompson goes crazy. They're capable of doing that, but in terms of defensively, there's nothing that they can do to stop what the Lakers want to do offensively. So if the Lakers just maintain that game plan and Anthony Davis doesn't turn into first 3.5 quarters Jason Tatum from last night, they should win. And they really do not want to take this to a game 7
No.
On the road in San Francisco. That would be a nightmare scenario for them. I'm obviously rooting for the Warriors to take it to game 7-1 because I don't want the Lakers to win. That's clear. It's not like I like the Warriors, but I can never root for the Lakers. 2, it's Mother's Day on Sunday. I would like to, spend the afternoon with my grandmother and then not have to be freaking out about the Celtics. And so the 8 o'clock start would be nicer for me. But we'll see what we see. I think the Lakers do win tonight. The Warriors. I'm not trusting what they are on the road this year, which is a really bad team.
Although they did win games 5 and 7 in
did.
Sacramento, but this is a little bit different. This is an experienced Lakers team with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and the Lakers play better defense than Sacramento. So you kind of have to weigh that into it. We'll see. We'll see how the whistle is in this game. If the Lakers are able to get to the free throw line, like they oftentimes do, because they're a big physical inside-out team, then the Lakers should be in good shape.
What's your prediction tonight, Sep?
Lakers. Lakers win by, I'd say, 8 to 10 points.
All right, so a comfortable win. So you just don't want to be nervous down the stretch, Sep.
No, I don't need that at my advanced age.
Yeah, and I think, once this series wraps up, there will be a lot of stuff to talk about, the LeBron and Curry legacies and stuff like that. So that's why so many people have been watching. I mean, like I said, Sav, a couple minutes ago, the viewership numbers have been gangbusters for the NBA. So I usually would say, hey, it's at home in LA. The officials might be on the Lakers' side. The NBA would like this to go 7 games. So who's refereeing tonight? Scott Foster?
Probably. He's the extender, right? So yeah. I haven't checked yet who the officials are in this game, but that's always a big question in the NBA. Yeah, this almost has a feel of like Brady, Manning, AFC Championship game in 2015 or whatever. So, it has that type of rivalry. So it should be interesting to watch.
No Scott Foster tonight, Sap. You've dodged a bullet.
Okay.
Courtney Kirkland and Mark Lindsay.
Okay.
So should be neutral.
Yes, that sounds good. The Lakers will go to the line a lot. And when people complain, I'll just push back and say they go to the basket more than Golden State. They also have a dominant post guy in Anthony Davis. Thus, you're going to go to the line more. Just like Philadelphia will go to the line a lot because they have Joel Embiid, who is unstoppable, and James Harden, who's throughout his career had the ability to get 10, 12 free throw attempts per game. So when you have guys like that, you're going to go to the line more than the opposition who's just jacking up threes.
Yeah, great flop. Or James Harden, one of the all-time great at getting to the free
best,
throw line, fair or not. So we'll see, Sap. It's been a really fascinating and fun playoff so far, and I expect that to continue. The only thing that seems to just not intrigue people is this Knicks Heat series for whatever reason. But we'll be talking about all of it when we come back for our next show. We will be previewing the conference finals. Lots of stuff is going to be happening over the weekend, so make sure you stay tuned to our social medias for updates on the show and our opinions on what's going on live at JohnSapp25, at Jet Stryer, and make sure you find the show wherever podcasts are found. Just type in the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sapp, and make sure you check out Full Press Coverage because they are a presenting sponsor and they have lots of great content on their website. So check them out. And we will talk to you later, everybody. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. Enjoy the weekend. The weather looks nice if you're here on the East Coast. I don't know what it looks like in the rest of the country, but I'm sure it'll be nice too. And enjoy basketball, everybody. We'll talk to you later. See ya.